Hey everybody, welcome back to the VMP Performance channel. I'm Justin, and next to me is Project Snowbird, our 2020 Shelby GT500. We have been hard at work developing new parts for this car, and one of the parts that just came off the CNC machine are the new Billet Fuel Rails. We're gonna get these things installed and show you how to do it. So we got everything out of the way. This strut tower brace was actually easier to get off than I thought it would be. Just reaching up here with a 13mm ratcheting wrench and getting all 4 bolts out was not bad at all. We prepped everything by disconnecting the connectors. I want to show you the problem area. Come over here and you can see this is the factory feed line. It comes off the firewall, comes up here. It spears into the side of the fuel rail. And this is bank 2, remember, if we go back to our data logs. And then it does this weird little crossover to feed bank 1 over on the passenger side. It doesn't look great, and we can see from the data it does not perform great either. So now that we've got everything broken down, we've even disconnected our injectors because they're probably going to stay in our fuel rail when it comes out. We're going to pull this guy right here. When we were breaking everything down, we noticed that there's some stuff that would keep the rails from lifting out entirely, so we went ahead and disconnected this crossover line right here. And we'll actually fish that out from the other side. Whenever I'm pulling fuel rails and injectors out, wiggling them back and forth seems to help break the O-rings loose. So, do that. Oop. Once in a while, if you do this perfectly, the injectors stay in the fuel rail and hold all the fuel in, but you can see I only got 2 out of 4 to stay in. Get this guy out. One final step before you go to the other side of the car. Take a tool like this and reach up under here. The crossover line actually has a push pin holding it to the underside of the shelf on the blower. Guy's loose. Go over to the other side. This guy fished out. And we're out. I'm gonna go lay these down on the table next to the new VMP fuel rails. So here we've got the factory fuel rails in all of their glory. They've got tons of volume here. You know, back in the old days, we would have taken these rails, welded bigger AN fittings on them and stuff. Like, I'm talking like the old days, like 20 years ago when I first started VMP and was making race car stuff go fast. But nowadays, this is what we do. We make really nice billet fuel rails. You can see that they are huge through the diameter here. They're actually drilled for number 10, but they use -8 fittings for ease of installation and compatibility. If you were ever to do a full fuel system in this car, I would feed each rail individually with a Y block, and then you would have fuel for days. But for a direct replacement of the factory fuel rails, we provide you with all the fittings and hardware, a new crossover line, a new factory line adapter, and then these little plugs just go in the front of the rails because, like I said, that is for future expansion. If you ever do an entire fuel system upgrade, you are ready to go with these rails. For now, they just swap in place of the stock rails and they hook up to the stock fuel feed line. So I'm gonna get our rails assembled. I'm gonna start with the driver's side rail, which has the port for the fuel rail pressure sensor and the factory feed line port. We've got this fitting right here. I already put a little bit of the provided grease on the O-ring to help it seat properly. Sometimes these O-rings like to tear, and you just kind of have to be careful about how you cinch them down so they don't tear. The lube helps prevent that. We're going to plug the front of the rail with the provided number 8 plugs. And This is the factory fuel rail pressure and temperature sensor. We've got the sealing ring on it. That's going to go right in the side here. If anybody's curious, that's M10 by 1.0 pitch. Take a big wrench right here. Just going to snug it down. And we're going to go ahead and put our injectors in the rail so we can drop everything into the car at once. Pop our plug in the front. Okay, so when you're working on these, if it's on the passenger side, there's no ports on the outside, so the VMP logo always reads properly when you're looking at the side of the car. There's a lot more room to work on the driver's side towards the back of the supercharger, so I'm going to go ahead and put the feed line on the passenger side and then snake it underneath and mate it up to the driver's side where I've got room to work. Snug that guy down. These number 8 fittings are designed to seal with the O-ring so you don't have to get them super tight. So I do want to show you something that is very unique to these rails. We have 2 different styles of mounts for them. These are the mounts for 60mm factory height injectors. These are not factory injectors that I have installed in these rails, but they do have the adapters to make them factory height, so we're going to use the shorter mounts. We're just going to kind of loosely assemble these here. We'll torque them down later. Notice that the thicker part is designed to line up with the slot in the fuel rail. When you're installing the shorter mounts, the squared off thicker piece is what goes on top of the fuel rail. The good thing is if you have them flipped around, they won't really fit correctly. So don't force them, just flip them around. We want to make sure we get all of our injectors reconnected. This is our fuel rail pressure sensor connection. You can actually do the fuel injectors before you bolt the rail down and you'll have a little bit more room. If you're running aftermarket injectors like we are on Project Snowbird, they sometimes place the connectors at different heights and things can be a little bit different, more difficult to hook up. Make sure that guy's on there snug. My fuel rail's moving around a little bit because I still need to tighten these bolts all the way with a tool. I'm gonna go around to the other side. All right, so we got our fuel rails installed. We pretty much buttoned up everything, connected the injectors, connected the factory fuel rail pressure sensor, connected the factory feed line. We checked our fittings front and rear to make sure they're tight. Once the crossover line kind of takes this natural U shape under the back of the blower, you can do the final tighten up on the fittings on either side. And then we did something a little bit extra. From the factory, the car had these big, ugly hose tray things going on. They had one for either side. And they're not even symmetrical, but they were just there. And now that we have these pretty billet fuel rails, we do not want to cover them up. So we kind of tucked the lines in. On either side, we just used one single solitary zip tie to kind of pull everything down and keep it nice and organized. I did shorten this line about 1/2 inch right here, and that makes everything look nice and pretty. Over here, we did kind of the same thing. This side's much more open, has a lot less going on. We put a single zip tie right here, got all this stuff tucked down, and you can see the fuel rails very well here. I hope you enjoyed the VMP Billet Fuel Rail installation on Project Snowbird. Check out the links below if you want to purchase this Billet Fuel Rail kit, and keep watching our channel for more fuel system upgrades for the 2020 Shelby GT500. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. I will see you next time.